So I'm over at the Harbor Freight there, and I'm looking for my friend Jerry, who works there. I always bring him Snickers, because he only...
Who is that homeless man?
Hey, cuz, you here? Taryl, where are you at?
Oh, wait a minute, it's Cousin Jaryl Jack, Pa.
Jaryl Jack! I wonder what that cheapskate wants this time.
Oh great, your cousin's here to interrupt my story. I only had like another hour left anyway.
Hey, cuz, did you miss me?
Yeah, I missed you. Like Montezuma's revenge.
Howdy, Jaryl Jack. What's with the hair?
Someone said I should let my hair down, so I did.
Yeah, you look like the drummer for Whitesnake.
Aldridge or Titchy?
Titchy. I thought one of the conditions of your parole was no more dumpster diving. What's with that leaf blower?
Aw, come on, cuz, I'm not on parole, just probation. And besides, they're still allowing me to dumpster dive, or treasure hunt, that is.
Yeah, whatever. What do you want?
I found this leaf blower, and I did a few basic checks, but I can't get it to start.
Maybe somebody ran it without no air filter in it. Just like that weed sniffer you brought in.
No, this one has plenty of spark, fuel, and compression, but it still won't start. I even checked the exhaust port and the screen in the muffin, but they're not plugged.
I am not working on that blower. So why are you here?
Well, since two-stroke oil runs through our veins, all I need is a place to fix this blower. Besides, this is the only place in Ponant County that fixes lawnmowers and such.
Do you really think you're smart enough to figure out why that blower won't start?
No, but I found a bunch of parts in the dumpster next to this blower, and I figured if I change enough parts, I might actually fix it.
So you're gonna be like these other backyarders and start replacing parts until you finally hit on the one that makes it work? You're gonna spend more money than that stupid blower's worth.
Well, since I got the blower and the parts for free, I figured the only thing it's gonna cost me is a little bit of time.
Cost you? It cost me. This is my shop. I own this shop, not you. But then again, you did do a good job on that weed sniffer, replacing that short block, and we are cousins, so I guess maybe you could use my shop. Under what conditions? You don't ask me for any help.
Thanks, cuz. You won't even know I'm here. You really think I look like Titchy? Jaryl Jack Derriere here. And today's how-to video is going to be what to look for on an Echo leaf blower that has spark, fuel, and compression, but still won't start. Now, what I did is I checked it for spark with using this little spark checker, and there's a little blue light right there. When you pull the rope, see that blue light there? That says that spark is present. But I don't really like these spark checkers because they don't tell you if there's a sufficient voltage. And to do a sufficient voltage test, Echo makes this adjustable spark checker. It's a PET 4000, and you can adjust the gap, but the problem with this doesn't show up on the camera too well. So I wanted to show that this particular blower, it has spark. I checked it with the spark checker, and it's good. Then I also checked the compression with this compression tester, and it's within specification. And the last thing I do is I spray a little supplemental fuel. Now you can use some two-stroke mix or carburetor cleaner. I just shot a little carburetor cleaner in there, pulled the rope a bunch of times, but it still won't start. So since we have sufficient spark, we have sufficient fuel and sufficient compression, the last thing that it has to have is sufficient spark at the correct time. So to check the timing, we're going to have to pull the flywheel, and that's what I'm going to do next. Okay, so to remove the flywheel, we have to remove these T27 screws here. And these are those coarse thread screws that work, they hold real well in plastic. So I'm just going to take all these screws out. Now, before you pull this cover off, just watch. There's a little plastic locking mechanism right in there. And I'm going to pull this cover off so you can see it. Now, off comes the cover. And this tube and this locking mechanism comes out. So just take note of how it goes in there so you can put it back in the same way. Just don't lose it, otherwise this tube won't lock in there, because that lock catches right on there to keep the tube from falling out when you're using the leaf blower. Now, to remove the bolt that holds the fan and the hub and the flywheel on, I usually use an impact to take them off, but you got to be careful. If you're going to use an impact, remove the recoil starter. And on this one here, there's 4 T27 screws that hold the starter in place, because what you don't want to do is start impacting on that bolt going against the force of the starter. So now we can turn this without any problem. So we're going to take the bolt off here. I got a couple of sockets. It's a 12 or a 13. It looks like it's a 13 millimeter. I'm going to get my impact adapter for a 3A socket drive and just take that thing right off. Now, this washer is directional, and it's real hard to see on video, but if you take it off and you just keep it on the bolt, you'll be able to put it back on the right way. We'll set that off to the side. The fan comes right off, and then there's this hub. This hub is also a 13 millimeter, and it comes right off. Now, I don't know if you saw that, but the flywheel was so loose, it just come right off. Now, usually you have to use some kind of a puller or a knocker to get that off of there. You can use a brass hammer like this and tap the crankshaft. Echo makes a real nice flywheel knocker, and they have different threaded adapters here. So it threads into the tool here, and I'll show you the part number on there. See if we can see it there, Mr. Cameraman. It was a 91087. So I'm going to hold it up, 91087, right there. And then the little adapter that goes in there is an M8 by 1.25, and that is a 91128. And I believe that's the right one that fits on these Echo crankshafts, and you just thread that on there until it stops, and you give it a tap like that, and the flywheel comes off. Now, this one was already so loose that it just come off. Let's see if we can get it out of there. Come on, Mr. Flywheel. There we go. Now, oh yeah, looky here, Mr. Cameraman. Look at this. Right here is the flywheel key, and it's built into the flywheel. It's a one-piece key and flywheel. And what happens is that flywheel key shears, and it allows the flywheel to rotate on the crankshaft and get the spark out of time. That's why we had sufficient spark, sufficient fuel, sufficient compression, but it still wouldn't start. You gotta have the correct timing. And this sends the timing way out of whack. And what they use is like a laminated flywheel. It's tough to see on this, but there's little laminations in there. Listen to that. Can you hear that? Quiet, Mr. Cameraman. You can hear the screwdriver tip catching on those plates. It's kind of like plywood made out of metal. So, what they did, Echo has a service bulletin. And the service bulletin number is 13-18R1. And it lists all the different blowers that are affected by that flywheel. And it has a new flywheel part number. It's installation of aluminum flywheel part number A409001250 and key part number 10014212330. and the key is included in a kit. And I just happened to find one of these right in the dumpster next to the blower. So I'm going to show you how to properly install this flywheel and key. Here is the flywheel key, and it comes in a little bag along with the flywheel. Now let me tell you, this little booger is difficult to install, and the easiest way that I found to install them is to rotate the crankshaft. Where is it? We got to rotate the crankshaft so that the slot for the flywheel key is pointed at the 12 o'clock position. Now you folks at home with digital watches, you're just going to have to figure this out. But the easiest way that I have found to install this flywheel key is to hold it with a little pair of needle nose pliers like that. And what you do is you set it in place, and you get another pair of pliers like this one here, little channel locks or something. Now I'm going to bring this to the end of the bench, and you have to hold that pup doggy right in there and squeeze it. You have to squeeze that thing in there and hope you get it. Did I get it, Mr. Cameraman? I can't tell. I'm gonna go get a flashlight. Well, like I said, this key is a real booger to get in there. So what I did is I just kind of set it in place, and I'm gonna try squeezing it to get it in there. Oh, see that? It fell out. I'm telling you, this is what they call an interference fit. And you've got to get that thing just right, or it is not going in there. Okay, we got that keyway in there, and you can see that it's level with the crankshaft and it's sitting down in the groove all the way. So the next step that we have to do is to put the flywheel back on, and there's a cutout for the keyway right there, and on the opposite side of the flywheel they have a little line, and that line corresponds with the groove in the flywheel, so you can put it right in the correct spot. There we go. Now we'll put this hub on. Get that threaded down. Get that snugged up. Then the fan goes on. There's 3 holes in the fan, and there's 3 little nubs sticking up there. So you line those up, rotate the fan a little bit, and it snaps right on. Now, in the bulletin, they'll show you the correct shape of that washer, and that's the correct way. Those 2 parts right there should go up against the flywheel. So this washer would go on like that, and I know it's hard to see, but that's the way it is on that bolt. Okay, you get a good look at that? So if you just follow the instructions, you'll be able to do this. We'll thread that on there and run it down just a little bit. Get her snugged up. Now, the correct torque specification for this bolt is 1,000 foot-pounds. And to do that, I brought with this 3/4 inch impact and adapters, and we're going to get her snugged down to 1,000 foot-pounds. Let's see. We'll get our socket on there. Come on. There we go. We got to get some air plugged in. Get our air, and we'll get this thing torqued down. You ready, Mr. Cameraman? Here we go. Let's do some more. That's about 750 foot-pounds. We got just a little bit more to go. Here we go. tough. You talk about a workout. Whew. All right, now I'm just messing with you folks. There's no way that could be 1,000 foot-pounds. Like my auto shop teacher said, if all else fails, read the instructions. So let's see here. What do they want you to do? They want you to put 1 drop of Loctite on there and install the fan hub finger tight. Do not tighten with a wrench. Apply 1 drop of 3-bond or Loctite to the fan, the bolt threads, to prevent the fan bolt from backing out. Assemble the fan, spring washer, and bolt finger tight. Be sure the washer tensioning, with bevel side down, is against the fan surface. Rotate the piston gently against the piston stop. Tighten fan bolt with the torque wrench to 130 to 140 inch-pounds. Do not use an impact wrench, which could cause damage to the piston top. Now, I'll tell you this. These piston stops are great for engines that are like 30 cc or greater because the piston top has enough thickness to withstand the pressure. But if you use a piston stop like this on these smaller 2-stroke engines, you're going to punch a hole right through the top of the piston. Ask me how I know. So, what we use is a piece of starter rope like this. You just get yourself a piece of that smaller starter rope. The 3.5 size is what I use here. We're going to have to take the spark plug out. Look at that nice new spark plug. And what we do is, since we're going to be tightening the bolt this way, we want to watch as the piston goes down and then starts coming back up. You see how that screwdriver is going down and then up as I'm rotating the flywheel? We want to have it down just about 1/4 of the stroke. What we don't want is to get this rope in the exhaust port so that the piston gets caught in the exhaust port and the rope, because that could do some damage too. So what I like to do is fold the rope over, stick it down in that hole, and I use a little screwdriver to help me push some of that rope up down in that hole there like that. And then if you can see, I'm rotating and it stops. So that should be good. What I'm going to do is use my little impact to get this. I'm going to take this back apart and do it properly for you. So we take that nut off, the bolt, the fan. Come on, Mr. Fan. And then this hub. There we go. So what they want you to do is use a little Loctite. This is blue Loctite 242 thread locker made by Loctite. This is the blue stuff, which is medium strength. You put 1 drop right there, and then you, by hand, they say, thread that hub on there. Now these threads are a little tight, so I'm holding the starter pawl assembly, and that's another reason you got to take the starter off. And you can just, once you get your piston stop in there, you can turn that by hand. And then we put our fan on. Remember those 3 holes, got to line up with those 3 nubs. I got it right on there. And then 1 drop of the blue thread locker on the bolt. We'll get that threaded in there. Okay, that's about as tight as I can get it by hand. Now, we're going to get an inch-pound torque wrench. I just happen to have one of these here. It's 130 to 140 inch-pounds. I'm going to need an adapter. Where's my adapter? There it is. The one that goes from 1/4 inch to 3/8, just because I don't want to go looking for another socket. This is that 13mm socket. We're going to put 140 inch-pounds you got to turn these handles to get to 140 inch-pounds. Let's see where we at. There we are. All right, I'll show you, Mr. Cameraman. Be patient. All right, right there is 140, right on the 0. There's a locking mechanism right here, and this one just happens to ratchet. It's a click type. So it's going to take a few turns to get that bolt run down. I'm going to run the bolt down, and then if our piston stop holds, I'll be able to torque this. I don't know. There we go. You see that? That's called a click type torque wrench. When it clicks like that, you've reached the torque specification. You hear that clicking? Clickety clack, clickety clack. All right, so we're at 140 inch-pounds. This is muy importante. In other words, very important that you take the torque off of the torque wrench and always return them to 0. Now with the deflecting beam type, you don't have to worry about it because it just naturally goes to 0, but you want to make sure on these adjustable ones, you run them all the way down. And that's the proper procedure for using a torque wrench. And I just like to put mine right back into the box, close it up, so we don't have any accidents. Okay, so now that the bolt is torqued, the hub is torqued, everything's torqued, you're supposed to let this Loctite set for 24 hours for it to fully cure. But we're going to go ahead and finish putting this blower back together. We take our piston stop, that rope out of there, we can set that off to the side. And now what we're going to do is put in, if I can find it now, what did I do with it? There it is. This piece here that we were talking about, this is the locking mechanism for the blower tube. And it goes in there right like that, because this acts kind of like a spring. See that? It's springy. And we can put our fan cover back on, just like that. We'll put our T27 driver bit back in our driver, and we'll get a few of these screws, and I just run them down snug. Well, I'll check them by hand, just like that. Just get those in there. There's 7 of them. Now what I like to do is I like to check them by hand. This is a T27 bit, and I just put the bit in there and check each one by hand, make sure they're fully seated. Okay, so now we can put our spark plug back in. Get that threaded, snug that up with the wrench, put a spark plug wire back on, and now this goes in one way. And the way that it goes in is that that rotational control sticker faces up. If you look right here, that's got a rib and a rib, and it's got a partial rib right there. You see that? That locking mechanism is going to click on that white plastic piece that we put in there. And if you listen carefully, you hear it snap in there, clicks in, and that keeps this pipe from falling out. Now, the only thing we have to do is see if we actually fixed it. So we're going to start her up. Well, I guess if you're going to start a leaf blower that you just finished fixing, it would help if you put the starter recoil back on. Okay, so to do that, we just fit it right on there. And I'm going to start these, get them going. Get it lined up. Come on now. Helps if you get it lined up, Jaryl Jack. There we go. There's one. I put the top 2 in first. And just run them down. I didn't tighten them up. We got to put this plate on there, and that is a fuel tank retainer. Keeps the fuel tank from sliding out. So let's get one of those in. And you notice I'm not gunning this thing. I'm not going to strip these things. Just be careful. And listen, folks, if you don't want to start these with an impact, don't do it. This ain't rocket science here, folks. This ain't the space shuttle. We're not flying to the moon. It's just an impact and a few little screws. So if you feel more comfortable using a hand driver, just go ahead and use a hand driver. Finish running them down. Get them all snugged up. I like to check them by hand when I'm finished, just to make sure that they're all evenly torqued. Now, I'm sure there's a torque spec for them. I don't know what it is, but I just get them tight enough so they won't vibrate loose. There we go, and that's all there is to it. We're ready to see if she'll start up, so here we go. And that's all there is to replacing the flywheel and flywheel key on an HOPV 250 leaf blower. And there's your dinner.
Oh, so you got it fixed, huh?
Oh, hey, Taryl. Yeah, it turns out it was a bad flywheel. You want this?
Don't watch your stupid flywheel.
Oh, that was a pretty good job, Jaryl, fixing that. Maybe you can teach Taryl a thing or two.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah, why don't you and Slippers start your own YouTube channel over at his mommy's house?
Well, I don't know if my mom really probably wants people over there hanging out and like doing stuff, so...
Are you done here?
Yeah.
Well, why don't you clean up your crap and get out of here, because I got real work to do.
Okay, let's go, Slips.
Alright, yeah, well, I guess we'll see what happens, I guess.
Oh, and by the way, I don't think you look anything like Titchy. You look more like Aldrich.
Whoa, that was pretty rude. Actually, I think you kind of look like Mick Mars myself.
Huh?
You know, from that band, Motley Crue.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, a couple of hits back in the 80s. Oh great, your cousin's here. Interrupt my story. And I was just about to get to the part where Jerry gets to Snickers.